Hi, you entrepreneurs. Today we have Rayson Choo. He is a speaker and a trainer. I think his story really talks about the idea of knowing what you want and kind of going after it, really kind of pushing through and helping him. First, he had to help himself to get where he wanted to get to, and then now he actually helps other people to get to that point. Please take a listen, subscribe, and of course, tell your friends.
Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
All right, so we are here with Rayson Choo. Yes, You are a transformational catalyst.
Yes.
Okay, so give me some insight to what that is.
All right. So basically, a transformation catalyst is all about transforming lives. But how I do about it is that what I do is on the side. What I did was that I actually went on to pick the brains of the best entrepreneurs around the whole entire world. So I got to actually get to interview people like Gary Vee, Cardone, and many others as well through my podcast called The Legacy Show. So it's all about, how I can actually get to connect with them. And also at the same time, I in fact, got to actually inspire these millennial entrepreneurs transform their lives through my podcast, because through my podcast, they learn a lot of insights about how to become better as an entrepreneur, and also at the same time how they can actually improve themselves, how they can actually grow their business, because I have a lot of different people that come over to be a part of it. So that's how I actually transform the lives of millennial entrepreneurs.
Okay, yeah, so the thing that got my attention was, Gary Vee and Grant Cardone. I think most business owners, entrepreneurs have heard those names before. So can you walk us through how are you able to get in front of them, interview them? What happened there?
All right. So basically, it's actually through these two ways. So one way is through referral. So the referral, what I meant is that, so for example, in 2017, Gary Vee actually came to Singapore. So that was the first time I got to meet him. But I knew somehow that one day we will cross paths again and I'll get to interview him. So a year later, that's where my friend, who is part of Vayner Nation squad, so he actually found that I've been very consistent with my work, with my podcast. So he thought that, hey, since I'm a huge Gary Vee supporter, a fan of his, why not give this young chap an opportunity, which is giving me the opportunity. So he actually Facebook messaged me and told me that, hey, I noticed that you have been very consistent in your podcast and I have a gift for you. And I was like, hey, what gift do you want to give me, right? And he told me that, hey, I want you to actually get to meet Gary in person. And, if you want to actually ask him for an interview or whatsoever, by all means, right? So I took the opportunity during this I would say group meeting, okay, where we had like Singapore's influential influencers and etc. to actually come on board in this meeting, and I was daring enough to actually ask him, hey, do you mind if I actually get you on my podcast? And he said, sure. And that's where I actually get to interview him, and voila, all the opportunities came after that. But for Grant Cardone, in fact, what I did was that I did the otherwise, where I actually LinkedIn messaged him and told him that, hey, I have this podcast. I am actually interested in interviewing you, and I would like you to be on the show. And that's where he actually said, hey, that sounds cool, sounds interesting. Tell me more. And after I told him more about the podcast, I didn't hear anything at all from him. Like literally, I didn't hear anything until the next day. I saw him doing a YouTube video saying that, hey people, I'm coming to Dubai, Malaysia, Singapore, blah, 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 blah. And if you want to interview me, send it to this email and we will get connected from there. And that's where I actually took the action and sent the email to the person that he mentioned. But to be frank, at first the message wasn't clear. Like the name of that person that he was mentioning about, it wasn't clear at all. So I had no choice but to, look at the captions and etc. and try to figure it out until I managed to get hold of his assistant.
So
So
how did
yeah.
you? So let's talk more about your kind of business. You've you had some issues, I think, with your mother, right? And you've been kind of helping her out, and that's kind of got you on this path.
Yep, correct. So basically, I have this very loving mother of mine who actually got this illness called schizophrenia. So it's a mental disorder which is pretty common around the globe, and it is actually something that people wouldn't want to actually be a part of, like because you get to have hallucinations, delusions, and etc. So I got this path where I realized that, hey, I want to actually learn how to communicate more better with my mom. And I want to actually be able to care for her in a sense, right? So I thought, why not take this opportunity to join the current institution that I'm in, which is the psychiatric institution, the asylum in Singapore, and to learn how to actually caregive her, and also at the same time treat it as a occupation as a psychiatric nurse. And on the other hand, before joining this, I was actually a part of a Japanese clinic. So somehow or rather, I actually got a huge mess in my life in 2014, where I actually thought that once you graduate from the army, where every Singaporean guys have to go through this process of joining the army, I thought I could go anywhere I want, do whatever I want in terms of nursing, since I have a diploma in nursing, right? So somehow or other, I joined this field in Japanese clinic. Within a couple of months, I was being laid off. Somehow or other, it was the toughest moment, right? New breed of, nurse, new guy coming out to work, and you didn't expect yourself to be fired within a couple of months. And that was the pivotal point of my life, because that was the point where I realized that, hey, this is not what I want to leave my life in jeopardy, in such a bad shape. I want to be better, or else I couldn't look after my family. I couldn't even get a girlfriend. I couldn't even live the life that I would like to live, which is freedom, which is able to enjoy my life to the fullest. So that's where I realized that, hey, it's time to improve on myself. That's where I actually went towards personal development. That's where I actually went for seminars, went to actually meet different people, and even listen to podcasts, which has inspired me a lot, which is called Addicted to Success podcast. And I'm grateful that I'm still in contact with the podcast host called Joel Brown, right? So he's Australian, and right now he's like doing massive transformation around the world. So I'm grateful that, through this setback, I'm able to actually come out of it and improve on myself and become better than who I was in 2014. So that's how I got the inspiration from, in terms of like wanting to start my own podcast and wanting to become better and wanting to I would say be an inspiration to others as well.
So how long after you started getting on this path, 2014, did you actually start putting the pieces together to start your own podcast?
Well, it's this podcast started in 2017, so it took me about 3 years to actually understand what I want in a podcast and how to go about it. But of course, in the start, having my own podcast was something like a dream, and also at the same time, it was something that I thought it would be just introducing authors and their books, because I got to go into, I got to actually go for an event in, if I'm not mistaken, it was in 2016, where one of my friend actually brought me to a book launch. So somehow or other, I got connected with the author, and somehow I felt that, hey, since I'm getting to meet some authors, why not I start to recommend books for people to read, and then after that start to actually get the authors to come in to talk about their books as well. And after the first episode, I remember this very clearly. After this episode, I realized that, hey, in fact, my Facebook friends, there are so many that are speakers, authors, coaches, trainers, entrepreneurs. Why not assemble them together and put them into this show? And then that's where I started to change the concept a little and started to change the theme of the whole podcast into entrepreneurship and somewhat of a niche per se, because some of them, they are very good in personal branding. Some of them are into dating and relationships. So I thought of just marrying them together first. And then slowly, then I realized that, hey, my targeted audience are actually millennial entrepreneurs. Why not focus on them and then focus on what are the problems that they're facing? What are the things that they need to hear? What are the advices that they need to hear in order to become more successful in their life? So that's where I actually bounce off from there towards entrepreneurship and business for my podcast. Even though I'm not 100% full-fledged in my own business right now, because it's still considered as a side hustle, but I'm really grateful that these people, despite knowing that I'm not an entrepreneur, full-fledged entrepreneur, but they still want to come into my podcast and be a part of my podcast to share their anecdotes and their golden nuggets with them.
So what's your main, besides the podcast, where else are you making money these days?
So I'm actually making money these days through speaking, training as well. So I go to schools to speak. I got to collaborate with certain people that actually came over on my podcast to actually hold an event to speak. So like last year, I actually held an event called Brand It Like Legacy. So it's something like teaching people how to actually improve on their personal brand, and also at the same time how to strategically network with giants like Tony Robbins, Ryan Serhant, and etc. etc. So it's more of like this kind of mini events that help me growing, and of course I have a full-time income that's coming from this psychiatric nursing as well.
So how's the process? What have been some kind of hurdles have you had to overcome to monetize the speaking engagements, the podcast, and so on and so forth?
Well, but in fact, there are many people that actually felt that, hey, this guy is still brand new, so they wouldn't want to charge me very high, or they wouldn't want to charge me at all, right? So sometimes, yes, these are what newbies will actually face when it comes to doing your own event, or even like being a part of another organization to speak and actually getting paid. So that's why I realized that even though you might have the credentials, right, but experiences and results speak louder than whatever features or whatever places that you have been featured on. That is more important. So that's why I actually got to mentor a few of my friends and get some testimonials from them, and they actually managed to share the testimonials with certain people, with certain friends. That's why people kept coming to collaborate with me and etc. etc. So it takes some time. So for those who are listening to this and watching this, I just want to let you know that nothing really comes easy. Like, if you want to be really successful in speaking and training and coaching, definitely it will take time. It's not going to be like a 1 day or 1 week or 1 month thing. It will be progressive. that's why I realized that, hey, this is something that it is taking some time, but of course, progressively, I have been improving and improving and getting some game for myself.
Has there been moments where you've thought this is just too much time that I'm taking to do this without getting the money that you could get in the other fields?
Well, I did. I mean, like last year, I actually thought of this. That's why this year I'm coming out um, with something different than as compared to last year. Where this year I'm coming to launch my own, I would say, online program, which is about strategic networking, which is about personal branding, and then also at the same time coming out with a team of people to help me out with my sales funnel and etc. etc. So this year will be a bit different. Will be I would say will be more interesting and more adventurous for myself. And I'm also prepping to come out my own book as well. So yeah, all these are in place.
So, if you could like talk to your younger self, that person maybe that was in 2014 was having
Mhm.
the difficult time, what kind of advice would you look to give that person?
Well, the advice that I would have given my younger self in 2014 was to actually be relentless and never ever let other people's opinion affect you, and never ever allow yourself to give up on your goals and your vision and your dreams, because ultimately everyone have their own mindset. Everyone have their own goals and dreams that they should and would have to accomplish one day. And I wouldn't want you to actually regret leaving this earth and leaving to heaven, right? So this is the ultimate thing that I would like to share with my 2014 self.
Hmm. And what's next? You talked about the book. You talked about building those platforms out.
Yeah.
And what's your main focus? If we're talking to you next year, if you didn't do it, you'd be like, I failed.
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest thing that I'm doing right now will be the online content, the strategic, I would say the online course that I'm coming out, and of course the book is also a part of it, which I would like to actually get it out by I would say for the website, the whole sales funnel and everything will be probably, if I'm not mistaken, will be out on March or April period. But for the book wise, it will take some time because my copywriter has told me that he wanted to market it for 3 months and etc. etc. So it will take some time for this book to be out. So once it's out, I'll let everyone know on social media. So hopefully I can get it by I would say September or October this year for the book itself.
I would love to dive deeper a little bit before we finish off the
Sure.
podcast. Is
Mm-hmm.
so in Singapore, right? The
Yes.
Most of my listener base is based in the U.S. We do get, outliers, in Europe and so on and so forth. In
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, what's the mindset of an entrepreneur? How does that, do you? Because I'm assuming you talk to a lot of Americans and a lot of people from other countries.
Yep.
How do you think it varies?
Well, it does vary because, like in Singapore, we are much more protected in a sense. The government is always helping us and etc. But of course, there are certain things that we have to do it by ourselves. But ultimately, the entrepreneurs in Singapore, the difference between Singaporean entrepreneurs and the ones in US and Europe are that they they base a lot of sense in terms of values, like Asian culture, Asian values, as compared to the Westerners, where they are very open to actually going to try things out and see how it goes. And even if they fail, they will get back up again. And of course, not saying that all Singaporeans are very traditional, very cultural, but of course, there are those who are actually able to do this consistently. They are able to actually go out and venture things out. But the Singaporean entrepreneurs, some of them, they are, I would say, they are they are always into like venturing within Singapore first before they venture out. They would prefer to venture in Singapore, or even like, you know, within Southeast Asia or Asia before they go and penetrate through the US and Europe market, because they realize that, hey, US and Europe, this place is not an easy place for them to dominate, because there are so many people like Russell Brunson, there are so many of all these huge names in US and Europe already. So if they want to create their own niche, they have to actually build it in Singapore, build it from home, then they go to several countries within Southeast Asia and Asia before they can try and dominate in the US and Europe. But of course, for me, I believe, in my opinion, for myself, I am the adventurous type, so I don't mind going out. That means I build some safety net in Singapore first before I go out to different countries and try it out and go and explore. Yeah.
So, being that the cost of living is cheaper in Singapore compared to, I mean, I would say the United States for the most part, how do you think the changing of digital media affects that? Because if you sell a book and your markups can be, I think, a lot less than someone here,
Mm-hmm.
they would need the cost to help them survive. How does that affect, I think, the
Mhm.
risk, the reward, if that makes sense?
Okay. Well, basically, to be frank, the livelihood in Singapore is quite a lot. It's quite massive. Like in Singapore, um, everything is quite expensive in a sense. That's why we are ranked like one of the top 10 or top 5 most expensive cities to live in. So in Singapore, like even buying a car is way more expensive than in America. So in Singapore, a car, it costs about 100 to 400, 300 or 400,000 Sing dollars for example, a Hyundai, or even like a Honda, or even a Lexus will cost that much. And
I mean, is that for the delivery cost, or what's the reasoning for the higher expense then? If you know what I'm asking.
For the high expenses in terms of the vehicles in Singapore is because the government would like to constrict the amount of people that's using cars in Singapore. Because if, let's say, there are so many of us in Singapore, and we are all buying cars at a rather cheaper rate, like how it is in US, the whole traffic will be congested, and they want to prevent this from happening. That's why they have built in public transports. They have the railway, the MRT.
Is that what it is?
Yes. So that's why they actually impose a sum of money for you, which is something like, in order to purchase this car, you have to pay a COE, which is, I can't remember the exact term, but the amount that you have to pay for the car, plus this paper that says that, hey, you are able to get this car
Is that
and
only
drive.
for automobiles, or what other items do they?
For automobiles, yeah, this is mainly for automobiles, but of course, for houses and etc., it is a different form where you have to actually pay, for example, a 4-room flat, which includes your living hall. It costs about 500,000 Sing dollars. And if you are buying a condominium in Singapore, it will cost even more. It can be as high as 700 to a mil, depending on the location that you are living in. So the expenses here are quite high in a sense.
Okay, this is when I used to travel a lot. I haven't traveled that much lately, right? And this might be pretty funny, but the easiest way for me to describe how the cost of living was in a different community was
Yep.
what a rough cost of a Big Mac would be.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The Big Mac here is not that expensive. The
Okay.
food here.
That was the easiest way of like when I was traveling to Germany, and then like you go to another country, you go all these different countries. You know, okay, a Happy Meal in American dollars, it's going to cost you around like $4. Okay, that's the kind of food wise, you know, like
Yeah, correct. Food,
okay,
yeah. Yeah, food-wise in Singapore is quite relatively cheap, unless if you are talking about fine dining, then that's a whole different level of expenses that you got to spend. So
sure,
if for example a Happy Meal, it is like $4.50 to $5 plus. So it depending on whether you upsize or not. Yeah.
well, you know, I haven't been McDonald's for a long time. It was one of those gauges I used to do back in the day. But I appreciate you kind of giving us a lot of a lot of insight. It sounds like, and you
Hmm.
know, correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you had a lot
Yeah.
of struggle in 2014. You knew the path that you wanted to kind of get to right there, and so you kind of put it out there. You allowed
Mm-hmm.
that world to kind of come to you, and
Yeah.
when you got those opportunities, you kind of went after them.
Yeah, somehow or other. So basically, before that, I actually went on to a training company because I was actually in a movie at first. I was thinking about what I want. Somehow or other, this advertisement actually came onto place, and it just resonates with me about coaching and teaching, right? So I thought, hey, this is something that resonates with me, and this is something that I really want. So the next moment is when I went back home, turned on Facebook. Guess what? I saw my ex-secondary schoolmate who used to be a bad boy in school doing motivational speaking. And that's where I was like thinking, hey, how did you get this, right? So I went on to ask him, and he actually got me the opportunity to meet my ex-mentor of mine. And that's where he actually brought me to schools to actually experience how they do the training and how they actually conduct classes with them. And that's where I actually went on, and in fact, went to become one of their trainees over there. And that's where I actually got to experience firsthand how to be a speaker, how to be a motivational speaker, a trainer of sorts. And that's where my I would say my motivation got larger, but of course, it wasn't sustaining enough for me. The income was very low, and that's why I told myself, hey, I have a family member that's at home that's struggling as well, even though I'm not staying with her because my mom actually had a divorce with my dad when I was 7 years old. Um, but I actually told myself that this is something that I really want to do, but I have to have enough to sustain for myself, to save up for my dream, and also at the same time to give back to my family. So that's where I actually joined this psychiatric nursing, this whole realm of mental health. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you again for coming on the platform. We're gonna have your website and everything in the marks for the podcast. But any last
Mhm.
words you want to say?
Well, the last word that I want to tell your listeners and viewers as well is that, hey, if you feel that this is what you want in your life, in terms of whatever that you're doing right now, continue to do it. But if let's say you're not doing something that you really love and you're hating it, please take some time to actually plan it out, because now is January 2020. There's so many more years for you to go, right? For you to actually improve on yourself, for you to actually dive deep and understand who you are and what you want to do. Don't be like the next, I would say, depressed celebrity that actually committed suicide because they all they wanted was fame, or all they wanted was something else, but somehow or other they couldn't get it, or people didn't understand them, or they had some trauma in their life that they have been keeping to themselves, bottling things up, and didn't want to share with the people that they can trust, or even their fans as well, because they do not know who to trust anymore. So in fact, if you are actually facing any issues, facing any problems in your life right now, remember that every other people out there are facing more tougher times than you are, or even similar times as you are. So instead of letting yourself down and letting your future self down or letting your family down, why not just give yourself some time to actually think about what you really want to do, and also at the same time why you are doing all this that you're loving, that you're not loving, and make sure that you're able to actually go out there and crush 2020 and dominate 2020.
Well, thank you, Rayson, again. Hopefully all you listeners got some great information, and look forward to talking to you in a year from now and seeing how the book comes out and everything else.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about it. And one more thing that I would like to share is, if let's say you guys are actually going through tough time and you want to give up, please don't, because there's so many people who gave up in their goals and dreams and they suffer and they regret. And for me, I didn't give up on my dreams, and I'm still continuously pursuing it. So if I can do it, you can do it too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rayson. Talk later.
Welcome.
Talk later.
Welcome.
Talk later.
Welcome.
Thank you for listening to The Road to Growth, Success of an Entrepreneur. Please like, subscribe, and stay connected. Visit www.theenriquezgroup.com.
Yeah, I created a website.
Hope to see you again next week. The Enriquez Group, signing off.